I often find a lot of dog sitters in burnout don't even realize it, however. So you could be in burnout and not even realize it until it's too late, until you're 10 feet deep into it, because it's so easy to get in the swing of things and just keep moving like a robot. This is the Dog Sitter's House podcast. Hello, dog lover. Welcome back to the Dog Sitter's House podcast. Thank you for being here. All right, today I am going to talk about the number one challenge I see time and time again for home-based dog sitters, and that is burnout. Burnout is probably the most talked about challenge, issue, problem, struggle that dog sitters have. And if you're just in the beginning stages of building your business and you're not experiencing burnout yet, you can pretty much bet it's just a matter of time before you are. So it's important for you to listen to this episode too, to prevent yourself from ever having to experience it. Now, of course, I am talking about the dog sitters who are doing this full time and, have plans to do it full time if you're not yet, and not those who are just, taking a dog here and there for a little extra cash, right? If you're on your way to building a fully booked dog sitting house, or you're already full throttle on bookings, it's likely that you're headed straight for or already experiencing this burnout. So I thought it would be really good to have an episode just talking about that. I often find a lot of dog sitters in burnout don't even realize it, however. So you could be in burnout and not even realize it until it's too late, until you're 10 feet deep into it, because it's so easy to get in the swing of things and just keep moving like a robot programmed to wake up, let the dogs out, welcome more dogs in, feed everyone, administer medicines, pick up an accident or two, throw a couple of balls, get everyone harnessed for a walk, take a walk, clean up, more messes, refresh waters, play ball, build a shy dog's confidence, feed lunch, stop them from barking 50 times in between all of it. Oh, yeah, and maybe throw a load of soiled laundry in that's been piling up for the last 2 weeks, or pick up dog poop in the yard, and on and on and on. Before you know it, you are just operating on autopilot and you're just going from one thing to the next, and you don't even realize you're burned out. Maybe because you're loving it. That's great. I hope you are. But you could be burning out and not even realizing it just because you're not getting any time to recharge, any time to be still with yourself. It's like your adrenaline just takes over and keeps you in this constant action because you're stuck in drive without an option for neutral. And the truth of the matter is you're actually stuck in survival mode. Because if you weren't in just survival mode, you'd be having processes and systems set up in a way that you can take that time to recharge, to revive. And if you're like me, you might be thinking, it'll get better. I swear it's going to get better. It's going to get better. It's going to get better. And that you just need to get better at saying no more often, which, might be true in some cases, or at some times, certain months that are busier maybe, or holidays. Or you might be saying, I block off a weekend to get away and recharge here and there, so it's all good. But as soon as you finally decompress on your long weekend, it's time to get back home. And before you know it, you're in overdrive again, just operating on autopilot and in survival mode. Because I don't know about you, but in my experience, after being in burnout for so long and going, it was so hard to take a long weekend and to just be still. I thought I was going to lose my mind the first time I booked a cabin out in the middle of nowhere, and I was just going to decompress and be in nature and with the goats, because there were these amazing goats on the farm that I was staying at. And I was just going to be in bliss. But the truth is, the first, I don't know, 2 days, literally, I was like, what do I do? What do I do with myself? What do I do? And I did not want to be on my phone, right? It was all about disconnecting. And it was so hard to disconnect that first day or two. And then I finally disconnected and I had a day of bliss. And then it was like, bam, got to go back to the grind, right? And so this is not something that is sustainable for the long haul. I could tell you that. And I'm sure if you're going through the burnout already, you can probably start to feel that as well. You know, what I found true about myself and other dog sitters that I've helped out is this. When you truly love what you do, it's really easy to become fully consumed by it because it just doesn't feel like work. I mean, it's a cliche, but it's true. When you love what you do, it's not work until you hit a dead end and you wake up feeling so exhausted that you can't even think or see straight anymore, right? Loving what you do so much that you can work 14 and 15-hour days nonstop with a smile on your face eventually becomes a problem. A good problem, right? Nonetheless, a good problem, because it's better than working 14-hour days at something you don't love, but still, it's a problem. The consequences can range from causing your relationships to suffer to destroying your health and everything in between. And this is why it's so important for me to try and help anybody out there. If I can just help one person find a balance that allows you to do what you love, earn a comfortable living at minimum, and doesn't require you to damage your health, relationships, or, sacrifice a life outside of your business, then that's enough for me. When I started dog sitting from home, I did this at first as a side hustle. I had no idea what to charge. So I did what most people would do, and I researched what other dog sitters and commercial kennels in my area charged, right? Makes perfect sense. Then I promptly charged slightly less than average. Essentially, I became the blue light special dog sitter. And, any of you who might actually not get that Kmart reference because you're too young, I'm sorry. That actually means, you're the Walmart of dog sitting, okay? Instead of the Tiffany's, okay? So what I did is I underpriced my competitors to win customers at first. Another way I like to say it is I was the local YMCA versus the private country club. Okay. Now this worked great, right? It was it attracted all kinds of people and customers. But the problem was that it worked too great, because before I knew it, I was fully booked, if not overbooked, every single day. Literally, when I reference working 14 to 15-hour days, I'm not joking. Sometimes it was longer than that if a dog was having, tummy issues throughout the night, right? And you don't actually sleep 8 hours or 7 hours or whatever it is, But I was overbooked working 14-hour days, doing it every single day of the week. And I did this for 2 years straight without a day off. I thank the heavens to this day that my body didn't stop me and say no, right? Because that's a lot, and that's a lot of stress. And I don't know how I did it through those 2 years. I just, I have this level of determination in me. Plus, I loved what I was doing. So that made all the difference, right? But it was still exhausting, and it was still way too much. So I thought the way to solve this was to hire helpers. Okay. I thought, okay, I'll hire a team. And, that's a whole nother bag of worms to get into. That's a completely different podcast episode, or probably 5 of them, on how to hire a good team, because it's not easy to hire a good team in this business in a lot of ways, but yet there's lots of ways you can make it easier, right? But I didn't know this stuff yet. I had to learn it. I was learning by doing. So I finally found a few good helpers, and that gave me a few hours off a few days a week. But overall, in retrospect, I see that it really just added to my to-do list. Took up more of my time because I had to schedule them. I had to deal with when they called off sick. I had to train them. That adds, like, that's like doing two jobs at once when you're training somebody and you're doing all the work. And you have to do that for as long as it takes to get them trained and up to par, right? So really, it doesn't always relieve you. Now, it can work if you do it right. Don't get me wrong. But it takes time. There's a learning curve, okay? So all this did was give me a few hours off a few days a week, but overall it really ended up adding more stress, energy, and work to my to-do list. Over time, what I realized was that having helpers, or rather not having helpers, wasn't the root cause of why I was working myself into exhaustion. You know, hindsight is 2020, right? That's what they say, and it's so true. You see, the dilemma I found myself in was that in order to remain competitive price-wise, I had to book more dogs. And you and I both know that more dogs equals more work, more stress, more energy, right? And to compound this issue, when I hired helpers, I had to earn more to pay them, which meant I still had to book more dogs. And it just set me out on this hamster wheel that I couldn't escape. But luckily, I followed a business coach for a separate business that I was interested in starting even before I started dog sitting as a side hustle. And through him, I was able to see what I was doing wrong that kept me on the infinite hamster wheel, so to speak. What I hadn't realized until I was already beyond burnout was that I was pricing my services based on the competition and not on the value that I provided. And to add insult to injury, I was playing price wars with commercial facilities that can take upwards of, 100 dogs or more a day, whereas I could only take a dozen at best without breaking the local laws or my back and my sanity. So I was modeling my pricing after a business that I couldn't model physically, and it nearly killed myself to keep going. Once the coach I followed helped me to see the value I offered was way above and beyond the local commercial facility and, truthfully, any competing home-based dog sitters that I could research and, kind of see what they did, I finally could see that this was the root cause of my burnout. The root cause was that I was providing a private country club service, but I was charging the local YMCA rates. I was giving 200% of myself every single day and only valuing it at 50% of my efforts. So it's no wonder I couldn't get off the hamster wheel, right? This wasn't an overworked problem. This was a math problem. And while this was a huge and pivotal epiphany, it still wasn't an easy fix, I have to be honest. In fact, it was one of the hardest challenges I faced in the evolution of my business, if you want to talk psychologically. This is because once I determined the true value of the services I offered, the price was easily 3 times that of my competitors. Now, do you have any idea what kind of mind war takes place in your brain when you realize you have to charge 3 times more than the average competitor? Talk about facing your fears, okay? Because every single fear immediately reared its ugly head, and your mind spirals into the anxiety-inducing what if nightmares. You know, like you start wondering, what if my customers think I've lost my mind and tell me to take a hike? Or what if I never earn a new customer because they only compare my prices to my competitors? Which leads to, what if I can't book enough dogs to pay the bills or my helpers? And so on and so on and so on. Right? And then you probably have friends and family and maybe even customers telling you, like, you're crazy and you really shouldn't do that. You're going to lose everybody. Right? And to tell you the truth, the first time I ever raised my prices significantly like this, I did have one customer who was brand new. She'd only used me once. So I totally got it. I understood. She didn't have the full understanding of how much value I offered, because it was just like I don't know, it was like a 2-night stay or something. And it was on a slow weekend too. So like, not slow, but like I didn't have any daycare or anything. So it was less dogs than normal. So, she didn't get to see as much, of what happens behind the scenes as normal. And then I tell her I was raising my prices and what I was raising them to. And she literally told me that I forget her exact words, but what I remember hearing is like, you have lost your mind. You're absolutely crazy. You're going to lose your business and be closed within like 2 months. And she said it in a mean way. She was not happy. She was very mad at me. And I just remember thinking, like, okay, that's just one person's opinion. That's just one person's opinion. That's just one person's opinion. I just had to keep saying that to myself, right? Now, all of those fears are legit fears, as I'm sure you can understand. And if you're experiencing burnout or you're headed straight for it by making the same mistake of charging too little, then I know you understand the giant, overwhelming fear of significantly raising your prices too. And in addition to the fears of losing business over higher prices, you might have the dog sitter guilt syndrome. This is what I call the dog sitter who loves all of their furry clients so much that they end up becoming more of a local dog shelter than a professional dog sitter who actually gets paid for their services. How easy is that to do? I mean, being dog lovers, you have to be a dog lover to be a professional dog sitter, okay? You just have to. And being a dog lover, it comes with the territory. You want to save every dog. You want to help every dog, and you'll do so at your own cost, right? So I get that it's a super huge, strong tug of war with our emotions, worrying about whether a fur client will be able to visit any longer because their parents might not be able to afford it if you raise your prices. And you certainly don't want to be the reason a dog you know and love isn't able to visit when you know it's what's best for them. And yet, I'm sure you can agree that the more financially stable you are, the more you are in a position to better help more dogs, because you will be able to stay in business that much longer. And if you don't earn enough money and you end up in the hospital due to being overworked, or God forbid you have to close your business because it's too hard to sustain financially, mentally, or even physically, then you can't help any dogs whatsoever, right? It's a really fine line to walk. A balance that a lot of dog sitters never seem to find and end up closing their business because it takes too much of a toll on them physically, mentally, emotionally, maybe even financially, which is exactly what I want to help you prevent or overcome if you're already struggling with this. I'm sure you can agree that being a home-based dog sitter, you can't operate like a commercial facility. You can't do what I did. You have to charge more in order to financially sustain the business because you're limited to how many dogs you can take each day in order to stay within your legal limits, but also to ensure you can manage them while creating a positively healthy environment for all of the fur babies. So what do? Well, the simple answer is you charge more. But I know it's not that easy. It requires you to be a better marketer, one who can help your customers connect the dots to see that they're still getting a steal based on the value that you provide. Or what I like to say and brushed upon earlier is you have to become the private country club versus the local YMCA, which means you have to provide more value and a higher quality service than your competitors. Because price is simply an exchange for value. And the value is determined by you first, yes, but who ultimately decides whether or not that is a correct determination is the customer. So it's important that the value you bring is actually higher than the price you charge in the customer's mind. Or you could put it another way, and you could say, it's important that you market your services and price it in a way that makes the customer feel like they are getting a deal, because they are. You see, when people feel like they're getting a lot more bang for their buck, you significantly lower their buyer defense. How many times have you purchased 2 items because it was a buy one, get one 50% off deal? And how easy was it for you to make that decision? I mean, I don't know about you, but I can remember many occasions where I see, oh, buy one, get one 50% off. And I'm like, oh, yeah, okay. I mean, it's not even a full second and I'm on it. I'm like, yeah, I'll take that deal. If it's something that you would use, then chances are it's a no-brainer to buy one, get one half off, right? So it's the exact same thing with your pricing in relation to the value that you bring. You want the customer to see the value to price ratio is a no-brainer. And you do this by offering a 5-star service while charging 4-star prices. You do this by being the private country club versus the local YMCA. I've had a couple of clients see that this is definitely the root cause of their burnout, and they did significantly raise their prices. But this is where you have to be careful, because their fears took precedence and they ended up not raising their prices for their current customers. Or if they did, they only raised them slightly, right? They didn't raise them enough to sustain their business in a more comfortable, doable fashion. Now, I can completely understand why, as I mentioned earlier, because it's natural to worry that you might price a current customer right out of your services, and you'd hate to do that to a dog. I get it. But let me ask you, how does that solve your problem of having to constantly book more dogs in order to earn enough money? And more importantly, what happens when you end up with half of your clientele at a higher price than the other half? Are you going to end up resenting some of your lower paying customers, especially if their dogs are the ones that cause you the most stress and energy? Right? You'd be like, I only get half as much for you and I'm putting up with this. Right? This can be a huge challenge, and it can happen quick because you don't want to take on this challenge, because I don't know about you, but if I start to feel resentment towards anyone, it typically shows up in some form or fashion, like out of the blue, of course, which ends up with me beating myself up for being a you-know-what later on, right? And And then, what are the chances I'm going to get a good review for that one? Right? So you don't ever want to set yourself up for um, having feelings of resentment later on. What I found when in my life coaching days, um, what I found was that a lot of people end up being people pleasers, and I was one of them, guilty as charged. And I would resent people because I'm always giving and I'm always pleasing, but I wasn't getting anything back in return, or I didn't feel like I was getting enough back in return, or what have you. And so I resent them. But you know what? That wasn't their fault, because they weren't asking me to give more of myself than I should be. I was doing that all on my own. That was me. That was my problem. That was my responsibility, right? And it's the same thing when you're dealing with your business and you're charging people different prices. You're going to end up resenting. I can almost guarantee, chances are you will end up resenting the customers or the dogs that aren't paying as much. And it just seems like those always end up being the ones that always act out and cause you more hassle too. It's just like law of karma, I guess, right? So this doesn't even take into consideration, okay, there's more, right? It doesn't take into consideration how much extra work or mental energy it will take for you to remember to invoice certain customers differently than others, Like now you just made your invoicing twice as hard. And the whole purpose is to reduce your workload, not increase it by adding more steps to your invoicing or, whatever it is, your book work, right? Speaking of adding to your workload, another benefit to being a private country club versus a YMCA is it reduces your workload overall. All right, let's examine this. Let's go in and see how. So when I increased my prices to match the value that I was already giving, I automatically attracted higher quality customers. Now, I'm not trying to say that anyone is better than anyone else. It just means I stopped attracting, and I actually lost the customers who constantly asked for a discount or an exception to the rules, right? Having these types of customers always adds to your overall stress, because then you have to have these uncomfortable conversations more often. And, I don't know about you, but how much energy and headspace does it take up when you're trying to determine how to professionally, politely tell a customer no without losing their business? And, business owners who work smarter versus harder know that when you charge higher prices because you offer 5-star value, then you attract customers who value the quality of the service more than they value the discount they might be able to get. This means you no longer have to bother with customers who constantly overstep your boundaries. Now you can totally choose to maintain or just slightly increase your current customers' pricing, because who am I? I can't tell you what to do. But I can tell you that if you want to earn more while reducing your burnout or preventing it even, this is not a viable option. So that said, when you do increase your prices, it's always a good idea, when possible, of course, to give your current customers a heads up that prices are going to be increasing in, X amount of time, whatever it is. Obviously, just as a courtesy alone, because I found that when I've increased my prices or a client of mine increased theirs, the majority of customers understand and they're happy to pay you more, because chances are they've already realized that you charge too little. They already realized they were getting a massive bargain, okay? And so they're like, well, I've had a year at, 50% off. So I guess it's about time I pay more, and you deserve it, right? So with all of that said, you now have a choice before you. You can keep doing what you have been doing, or being the local YMCA dog sitter, if that's what you've been, and be in the exact same place a year from now as you are today. Or you can take a stand and be the premium private country club that over-delivers so that you can earn more with less canine chaos. And thereby allow yourself some breathing room already, right? While providing a more personalized service for your fur friends so that everybody wins. This is the part that I cannot do for you. This is the part that takes faith. It takes trust. And most importantly, it takes courage. So I'll leave you with the words of Muhammad Ali. And I quote, "He who is not courageous enough to take risks will accomplish nothing in life." You are an entrepreneur, and successful entrepreneurs develop a thick skin for taking risks. You can reduce the risks the better you are at conveying the value offered in relation to your pricing, but nonetheless, it's taking risks that move the needle forward. The good news is that there are many dog sitters who have already succeeded in charging premium pricing, including myself. So you already know it's possible. You already know somebody who's made it possible. And if it's possible for one, you know it's possible for many, including you. And I think right there is a good time to say goodbye, good day. Thanks for listening. Have a jolly good day. Until next time, happy tails to you.